Bible books for the last couple of lessons, and then we are going to focus on the events that are in the Bible. So by looking at the events, we are trying to understand what the Bible is trying to teach. So there are stories and non-stories. Non-stories, there are prophecies and other teachings. We're not going to look at these until, these are covered in the doctrines and the worldview and so on. And then when we try to understand Jesus Christ, that's going to be the next class in the coming spring. And Jesus Christ, we look into those stories. But before that, we are going to see the events that happen in the Bible. So we begin by looking at the beginning. So the Bible, it is constructed in a way. Actually, I told you that the book of Job or Job is the first book ever written, probably written in the Bible. But that book does not come in the front. Rather, Genesis comes as the first book in the Bible. The reason is because that it gives a certain order from the beginning to end. So the Bible is placed in a way that it suggests how it began and how it is going to end. And so we are going to look at the beginning. And there are we are going to look into biblical narratives and the beginning. It covers the creation and Eden, the Garden of Eden, which basically tells the story of alienation. And then first murder by Cain, and the big flood, and Tower of Babel, Noah's shame, and Sodom and Gomorrah, and so on. There are, hundreds of events in these stories, but we cannot cover every one of them. It's going to be your job to go into the Bible and read it yourself to see some other events. But in this class, we are going to look at the major events that kind of have some relevance and lessons and teaching for us, so we can understand Christianity better. So looking into these events, we are trying to help you understand what the Christianity is about. So let's begin with the story of creation. This is a quote from the Bible, and if you are better with some other versions, you don't have to follow English, but you can use your Chinese Bible or Japanese Bible, whatever is better for you. And very first chapter and the first verse. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And verse 2, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of water. So this, even though it's only 2 verses, it contains a lot of information. And it suggests a lot of ideas. And it suggests the worldview. So this is how Christianity or Christians view the world. And not only the Christians, the Jews and the Islam, the Muslim, they do share the same worldview, which means at least 2/3 of global population. If we have, 60 billion or 6 billion? 6 billion? Yeah, if we have 6 billion population, this 4 billion are, sharing the same perspective. We say there are like 1/3 Christians over the world global population, but there are Jews and pretty much the same number of Islam, the Muslims. So 2/3 of global population has the same worldview and perspective. And China being probably the major population with the sharing the Chinese language and the culture, probably 10%, 20% of Chinese population are believed to be Christian now. So that kind of adds the number. We don't know exact number, but we're kind of guessing. So there are quite a big, large population who shares the same worldview. And this event, the creation, there are only two possible views about our existence. One say we are created, as 2/3 of the world population. And there are a small population of people who believe we are evolved from something else. We evolved from nothing. And amino acid, then it becomes somehow the kind of more complex protein. And out of that complex protein, it began to recreate itself and divide it and become a life form. And then those cells developed into a multi-cell organism, and then it developed into more complex plant form, and out of the plant form it becomes like a live animal form, and so on. So that's kind of a theory, another theory. So there are only two theories: creation or evolution. And based on this claim, this is it's not something. It doesn't say it is possible that God created heaven and earth, and it doesn't say it might be good if God created heaven and earth. It states God did. God created heaven and earth. It's a statement, and there is no. It doesn't need no defense or explanation. It's a claim, and we say it's proclamation, meaning God is saying it. So there's certainly the beginning, and then God created, so the idea of creation is the very center of this story. So God had created, and then there's a very complex situation when the heaven and earth was created first. So in understanding creation, there are three different modes. Creation is not just the creation. If you look at the story in the Genesis chapter 1, there are at least three different modes of creation. Number one, created. It means this is the creation. Something comes from nothing. So it's like a magic. Imagine there's nothing at all, and somehow by some divine power or some divine magic, that kind of happens. And so heaven and earth There was no heaven and earth at all. And then when God said, let there be heaven and earth, He created heaven and earth. So that's creation, something coming from nothing. Then appearance, something that appears into the space and time that God created. So if you go back to the verse that we have looked, God created the heavens and earth. And in the beginning. In the beginning means the creation of time. So the time that we are running through, the time that we cannot beat, time that we cannot go back, and the time that we do not know the coming future, this is also created by God. So time and space are the main thing that God had created. So the heaven and earth represents the time and the space. And there is a two different space that is visible and that space that is not visible. So visible and not visible. The heavens is the space that you cannot grab or touch, and it's not visible. The earth is something that you can touch and something that is visible. So we have two different spaces, and we have in the beginning the time. So there's a time and space area. So the creation means God created time and space, and God is there outside this. God is not controlled by the things that He created. I mean, that's the basic idea. You create something and you don't necessarily be in the creation. You are over it and you control. So time and space, God creates and it's there. And there's the state. This is not the space or the thing, but this is a state. And this state of being is also maybe called context. So context, there's a context of time and space, and there's a context that is beyond time and space. And God is there. And we call this as and this heaven is where God is. And what happened is when God creates something that is here outside the creation, outside the time and space, it comes into the time and space and it appears from here to here. So normally, basically, it does not belong to there, but it comes into this. And who? Angels. These are basically the spirits. Even though they have bodily form, they do not belong into time and space. But 1/3 of these angels following the Satan or Lucifer, he revolted against God, and these one.
Lucifer is a name?
Yeah, the name of this,
angel?
yes, the angel, the head angel. So Lucifer, there's another name for this. Anyway, Satan, Lucifer, and there's another name, and there's a Michael, and Gabriel, and Lucifer. So these are like three head angels, and one of those head angels goes against God, and there's like a heavenly battle, but we do not know what happened because the Bible does not say much, probably a couple of verses only. And this Lucifer comes into the time and space. He was exiled or kicked into time and space. So that comes in there. Not only that, but God Himself comes into the time and space. And Genesis chapter 1 verse 3. If you can look into your own Bible, okay, if you prefer to, whether it's you look into your own language, and it's probably better. But in the Bible, the English Bible, it says verse 3, chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1, verse 3.
Verse 3.
So that's the very first book and the third verse in the Bible. This is probably the very important verse of all the Genesis. And in English version it says, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light." This light is not the sun, you know that. The sun is created, it is formed, it's created later on. But this is something else. And the verse 4 and 5 try to explain what this light is. And the light comes in. And it is the light comes in and it appears into the time and space. So most churches do not tell this. The sermons, you cannot do this on sermon. It requires certain teaching environment to do this. But the light comes in from this context to this context, which is a time and space, which is unlimited. The light was not limited. This light comes in. So the question is, what is the light? And if you go into the Gospel of John, the Apostle John the Apostle tried to explain what the light is, and you can find the reference there. But to make the teaching short, the light is God Himself coming into the time and space. So many think that Jesus Christ came after 2,000 years ago, come into the time and space to us, which we call incarnation. Incarnation means God Himself coming into the time and space. But Bible says, very at the beginning, as God creates the heaven and earth, God comes into the world in the form of the light. So this is, who is this? This is the idea of a Messiah. So the Messiah is the idea, God coming into the history, God coming into among the human beings, and being with us together. So Messiah is not only the Savior, He is the one who walks with the human creation. So we are created, and God from the beginning decides to be with us. Because that is the very only reason God created a human being. God did not create the human being to, play with them or to make them the subjects or robots, but God wanted to have that relationship, very personal relationship with the human generation, human being. That's why God created, so many of us, and so many of us very different from one to another. There's no one who are the same. Even the twins, they are not the same, and they are different. So God created every single one of us different, and He wants to have that millions of a different relationship. So that's the reason God created, and it is shown in the very beginning of Genesis, the story of creation. So the event of creation is not just God showing, I am so powerful, I can do this, and you are just a little human being under my authority and subject. That's not the story. The story says, the Genesis, the creation story says, I value human being. I just want to love you guys. I want to be with you. I want to play with you. I want to be happy with you. I want to have that peaceful, dynamic relationship with you. So that's the main message of the Genesis, the creation story. Not only there's appear, there's another form. It's formed. Formed means, while the creation means something from nothing, this means and good example is so the story in the Genesis, the creation story. God makes a man from something, and God creates man out of dust. Dust is, God created that dust, heaven and earth. The earth is the source or resource for God creating the man. And then from man, God creates woman. So that's not creation, is formation. So God forms man out of dust, and God forms woman out of man's the rib, right? So that's third mode of creation. So there's a pure creation, there's an appearance, and there's a forming. So these are three different modes that are written in the story of creation. And the reason I'm saying this is, we, human beings, are doing these two. Sometimes we create something from nothing. Sometimes we make something from something. And it's our creativity, and is our work. Work is making many times something from something. And we have given the time, and we have given resources, and we have given talents. So we use these talents and the time and the resources to help, to benefit others. So that is called work. But in this capitalistic Western world today, the work is to earn money, earn living for yourself. So that's totally different from the Christian perspective. Actually, the communism, the idea is more Christian. than the capitalism. The only problem is the communism does not work. And it's not because it's a bad idea, but because of human ego, our sinful desire, our lust, our pride. It goes against the idea of communism. And I mean, you know history. China and North Korea, they have tried to be successful with the communism. The not only the political idea but the economic idea, but it failed. And with the 70 years of practice, we know that communism does not work because the human ego and desire. But otherwise, capitalism, it is based on human selfish ego. People want to become rich. People want to have more, and people want to be above other people. So that's basic idea behind the capitalism. So is the capitalism Christian? I can say no, it is not. But we live according to capitalistic idea. Even you know yourself, the China has become more capitalistic and a market-based community than the communist or socialist ideal. So, it is against the Christian idea, but it is what it is. So there is that tension and that paradox between the Christian ideal and actual life that we are living in. So whether we like it or not, we are living in this capitalistic world. Anyway, the definition of the work, according to the Bible, is trying to create something from something, or even something from nothing, to benefit others, not to benefit yourself, not just to just provide the means to survive. I mean, that is basic idea of work, but the Bible says you are working to benefit others, to help others, to serve others, to support others, rather than to feed yourself. So the creation, I mean the book of Genesis, the very first page, it tells what a human life is about. So other than three modes, we have issues and agenda that we probably need to talk about when we study the creation, the idea of creation or record of creation. And the first thing is it true? Is it just a myth? Is it just made up stories? Many people who even call themselves Christians think and believe that it's not really true thing. It's very symbolic idea that is written in the Genesis. So the question is it a factual history, or whether it is a myth, just a made up story? And belief comes in. There is no scientific way to prove that this story in Genesis is history. I mean, it only happened once, and it's not going to happen again. So there is no way to verify or go look into and kind of test whether this is true or not. And we cannot go back to the beginning of Genesis and look into it. There is no way to do that. There is no more Adam, the Garden of Eden. There is no existence. It's gone, and it's prevented from us to go in again. So it's not there. So there is no way to verify that. So only way to do is believe. So this is where the belief comes in. Whether you believe it as a myth or you believe it as a real history facts then another issue, the agenda regarding the understanding event of creation is the themes. There's many themes in this story, especially chapter 1, 2, and 3. These first 3 chapters of Genesis are the key to understanding the whole Bible. So without understanding the Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3, you are not going to be able to understand the Bible at all. So Bible is not only about Jesus Christ, that's the center of New Testament, but the Bible is based on the Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3. So this story of 7 days of creation, it's not just a story of how God made the animals and how God created formed the plants out of dust, and these are not the main thing. It has those themes embedded in those stories, and it is very important for us to look behind that story and find out what the real themes are. And with the themes, it presents us with a perspective, how to read, how to understand my life, our life, how to understand the world, how to understand the family, how to understand the marriage even. Because marriage is a one institution that remained unchanged even after the alienation between God and human being. So the marriage is the blessing, and it's continuing blessing for human generation. So whether you are Christian or not, the marriage is a very sacred, it's a holy thing, and the Bible says it's the holy of all the human activities. So it includes the perspectives about, like, for example, marriage. And then there are lessons about how we should live as a person, not necessarily as a Christian. Even though you're not a Christian, if you read and study the book of Genesis, especially first and second and third chapters, then you get that insights about human life and the living and the ethics and the morals and these things. So there are plenty of lessons in there. And then information, it gives us some information about what we did not know, what we do not know, but what we are interested. So, for example, it gives us information about how death of human generation came to be. So it answers why man and woman has to die eventually. And it has some answers and informations that we question over the quiz number 6 together and find out which are the right answers to these 10 questions. And this part of quiz basically covers the epistles, the letters, most of them written by the St. Paul or Apostle Paul. Question number 1 asks, this epistle writes about the truth that people are justified by faith in Jesus Christ, by nothing less and nothing more. So it tells that faith matters. You are saved by faith in Jesus Christ. And answer is Galatians B. Number 2, this letter is written to help readers to understand the dimension of God's eternal purpose and grace, come to appreciate the high goals God has for the church. The answer is Ephesians, number C, Okay, number 3. Which of the following is not the purpose of the Paul's letter to Philippians? So he writes to the Philippians again, and A, to report on his own circumstances. That is correct. Number B, to encourage the Philippians to stand firm in the face of persecution and even in the persecution to rejoice. Yeah, that is yes. And C, to exalt them to humility and unity. Yes. D, to help Philippians to become rich and famous. I don't think so. So answer will be D. So D. The last one. Okay. Question number 4. Which of the following is not Christ's picture in Colossians? Okay, in the Colossians it tells who Jesus Christ is in many different ways, different pictures. A, the very image of God. B, Jesus Christ is the creator. C, Jesus Christ the pre-existent sustainer of all things. And D, the Christ is the head of the church, which is true. E, Jesus Christ is the first to be resurrected. Yeah, it is true. F, the fullness of God in bodily form. Yeah, in another word, incarnation. Yeah, that F is true. G, the reconciler. Reconciler means making up between two persons or two beings. H, none of the above. So the answer is H. So all the answers are correct. And there's no wrong answers on number 4. So the right answer for you is H, none of the above. Number 5 asks, this episode writes about the eschatology. Eschatology meaning doctrine of last things. What's going to happen at the end of human generation, the earth. A, Colossians. B, 1st and 2nd Corinthians. C, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. D, 1st and 2nd Timothy. The answer is C, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. It talks about the last things that are going to happen, just like a revelation. Number 6, Paul does not write about the following into the 2nd Thessalonians. So what is not in the 2nd Thessalonians? A, to correct misunderstanding about the role of apostles. Or B, to encourage the persecuted believers. Or the C, to correct a misunderstanding concerning the Lord's return. Or D, to exalt the Thessalonians to be steadfast and to work for a living. The answer on number 6 is A. It does not talk about the role of apostles. Okay, number 7. This letter was written to develop the change he had given his young assistant. So it's a pastoral letter or pastoral episode. A, is it Colossians? Or B, 1st and 2nd Corinthians? Or C, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians? Or D, 1st and 2nd Timothy? The answer is D. Yeah. So Timothy is a young pastor, and Paul teaches him how to be a good pastor. And number 8, this letter was written to give personal authorization against opposition, and also to instruct about faith and conduct, and also to warn about false teachers. Is that James or Philemon or Titus or First Timothy? The answer is C, the Titus. I'm sorry. The answer is B, Philemon.
B.
Yeah, B. Okay, number 9. This letter is organized in organized in a way prescribed by ancient Greek and Roman teachers to build rapport, to persuade the mind, and to move the emotions. The answer is C, Titus. Okay, number 10. Theme of this episode is the absolute supremacy and sufficiency of Jesus Christ. In other words, it tells that Jesus Christ is the number one, is best, and as a revealer and mediator of God's grace. The answer is D, Hebrews. Okay. Thank you, and we'll continue with our lesson. Before the lesson, here are the some of the reports. Okay, just forgive me if I pronounce your name somewhat different, but Hwang, Sang, Hwang, Sang, or Jang. Okay, how do you pronounce your name?
Qian
Zhang. Okay, thank you. And Jerry Liu? Is that Shu Yan? Shu Yan, is that correct? Yeah. Thank you. And is that Hwang? And Mei Hong Ni. So those people who got 5 points, I want you to write just 2 pages instead of 1. I mean, it's a 10-point credit for the report. And if you write the full 2 pages, and this time I did not, count off for the just copy. Some of you just copied something from internet, but do not copy. You can quote. I mean, even if you get it from the internet, you can use it, but make sure that you are going to quote instead of just copy it on and paste. And copy and paste is not, the way to do the report. So unless it's your own word, you give this quotation mark. And then next, on the next report, I'm going to count off if you just copy and paste from anything that is on the internet. So, or even from the books. I mean, when something is not your own words, you always give a quote, and then reveal the source if it's possible. But I won't require the source name, but at least you have to quote it and say, this is not my own idea or word, I got it from somewhere else. And in United States, I mean, the perjury, meaning you just copy down and say, make it look like it's your own words, that's a very, very serious offense. So we do not want to do that. Especially when you're a student, you want to make sure that you are quoting from someone if you use someone else's idea or the writings. So for the second report, the topic is on the subject of worldview, and it's in your textbook. There are many topics regarding the worldview, like three lessons on the worldview, and you can choose any one of them. Just choose something that is easy for you, and just write 2 pages. 2 pages meaning when you're using this letter size, it's double space. This is not double space. It's a single space. And use a double space and the letter size 10 in the Word program, the Microsoft Word program, letter size 10. And just try to make a full 2 pages. And the reason I'm asking for 2 pages because I want you to write your own idea and reflection. So you have to have your own like a reflection. Even if you don't agree to the this Christian ways, you can say I don't agree, and that's perfectly okay. And you don't have to agree with all the things that the Bible say or Christianity is teaching. Purpose of this class is not to force you to believe something that you don't want to believe, and you can always argue or you can critique the ideas or the thoughts or the lessons that you are taught in this class. So you can go against about the teachings of Bible. That's okay, but I want you to write your own reflection and own idea. So that's about the report, and your report should be coming to me at the final class, which is in it's going to be the March 3rd. So first class in March will be the last class for us, and we have only 3 more classes left, which means you probably want to begin the writing of your report. Those who have not submitted the first report yet, I will not penalty for being late, so you can still submit your report anytime until the end of the class. And I'll give you a full 10-point credit and without penalty if you write 2 pages with your own ideas and reflections in it, and then make sure that you do the quotation if it comes from other source than your own. So that's about it. Let's continue with our lesson today. So we have covered the idea of or event of creation, and so on it. And in Genesis chapter 1, it says it took 6 days and nights for God to create everything, including us, the human being. Because God is powerful. The God in the Bible, He is a powerful God. And He is able to do anything and everything. So whether it's just 24 hours period of day and night, or whether it's a million years, it doesn't really matter. The thing is, God had created, the fact is God created this. And the day in the Genesis, the word for day is not the day as we know of today. It could be 24 hours, or it could be a certain given period of time. So the day means a given period of time. So it could be 24 hours or something else. So it can be interpreted in many different ways. However, the important thing is, as you read, Genesis 1:31. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was an evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So, in Hebrew thoughts, the day begins at the evening, not in the morning. For us, usually, the morning is the beginning of the day. But for Jews, the morning the day begins at the evening. And see, this 6 days and night, I understand it to be the So I understand, my own interpretation says it is basically the summary of the human history, what had happened prior to human existence. So before we come to exist on earth, there's a lot happened. So we appeared in sixth day, or sixth period. Period might be the better word than day. So it's like a given period. We are somewhere here in the sixth day. And the seventh day is going to come. General interpretation is the seventh day is done, and God take a rest. But I think that is the whole summary of a human history. Eventually, God is going to take His rest when everything is finished, and everything is not finished for human generation. Jesus has to come back there, and that's the second coming of Christ. And we are still somewhere in here. The history goes on as a sixth day, and so this is another way to understand the story of 7-day creation, and we can say that we are somewhere here because God is still working. That's what Jesus said. Jesus said, He is not done, He is still working. Thus, I am working. That's what Jesus said. He said, God is working, and I'm working for Him and with Him. And we Christians, we are still working with God because God is working. What is God's work? God's work is so everyone come to know and believe in Jesus Christ. That's God's work. And that is quotation from Jesus. Jesus said it himself. And so his work hasn't finished because we are still in the process of sharing gospel and telling people this Jesus Christ is the very Son of God, and He died on the cross, and He died because of our sins. And if you believe in that Jesus Christ, then you are going to be saved and have eternal life, and you become a citizen of the kingdom of God. That's basically what the gospel is. And we tell that over and over again until people come to really believe it, and not to just agree with it, but believe it. So that's 6 days and nights. And then it tells, in the Genesis, it tells what the God's will is. And God's plan is. This is in the Genesis 1:26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea. That dominion, another word, is responsibility or stewardship. So we have responsibility over this creation God has given us. We are not here to rule, to abuse it, but we are here to use it and make it profitable for human beings, and but still reserve and conserve, because they have their own rights, God-given rights to exist as animals and plants and the mountains and rivers. And some of the human history did exploit. Exploit means bad use of. So human beings exploit nature, the rivers and sea, and look what happens today. The global warming is a result of human lust, human ego. It's an evil. So totally the Bible is against that evil, and we are to just, according to this Genesis, we are to just steward, meaning to serve, to take care of. And it is God's will for us to take care of the nature and the earth, and then of other human beings. So that's the main idea of Bible. And then man of dust. This statement in Genesis, the event of creating human beings. Look at this. Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostril the breath of life, and the man becomes a living creature. So that means we are just worthless dust. This until God gives life and the meaning to human beings. So without God, that's saying without God, without the blessing from God, without the life from God, human beings are just flesh and bones. It's dust. It's just like a thing. Thus, the Genesis saying God is necessary. God is a must. God is, has to be there for us to live and us to have meaning. So dust, you see dust every day. Dust doesn't have meanings. They don't have that value. They don't have that, respect. And we are just dust without God. So that's what is trying to say. And then from a man, a woman is created. And let's look at 2:21. Genesis chapter 2, verse 21 says, So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, Adam. And while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. I can do like a couple hour sermon or teaching on this, but I'll be brief. Basically, what it's teaching is man and woman are just the same. It doesn't say woman is inferior because they came out of man. They used to in Vatican and even in many evangelicals, they interpreted woman is inferior because they came out of man. And that's wrong interpretation. The Bible never suggests that. The Bible suggests man came first and the woman came out of man. That's the statement. And it doesn't say anything about being inferior or superior. But man try to interpret in the way that it serves male generation. But not anymore. Most evangelicals, good Christians believe man and woman are equal in everything, except their role to, woman to give birth and man to be the father. So that's only the difference. Otherwise, the man and woman are equal in every respect. So this is saying man and woman are very close, very intimate. They cannot be separated. They cannot be put in this kind of structure. So there are other verses saying that, but from this verse we conclude. And also the last thing, this has to do with the marriage. So when God brings man and woman together to be the husband and wife. So God has authority over the marriage. And us as Christians believe that it is God's sovereign plan and authority that we come to know together as a husband and wife. So most evangelicals will believe that a Christian wife and Christian husband should come together as a family, rather than non-Christian husband or wife and a Christian husband and or wife. Because it is the marriage, you have to have the same value, same worldview, same perspective, and same belief. Otherwise, your children's going to be very confused. So this is one of the reasons that we believe the marriage is holy, not only holy, but marriage is authorized and continue to be blessing from God. So the marriage comes in there in verse 24 of chapter 2, Genesis, says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed." See, the thing is, none of other religion, except Christianity and Judaism and Islam. These are the three religions that believes in this, meaning God had ordained marriage. The other religions, they don't say this. So, one thing that you have to note is once you get married, you become independent as a person, as a family. Your mother and father, or your wife's mother and father, or your husband's mother and father does not have the sayings or authority about your own family. So you become independent socially, economically, and mentally, and spiritually. So that's the main idea in Christian marriage. That independent does not mean that you alienate your parents, but that's a different stage in your life. You become adult, meaning that you become responsible for your own family, and once you get married and become husband and wife and create a home and family. So that's basic idea, and it's very rooted in the Western culture. So if you are trying to understand the American culture in general about their family, then you need to understand this. They become very independent once that they become a family. See, it is pretty much different from us Asian culture. I mean, we're changing, but until recently, and still in some of the Asian countries, the mother and father, parents that has very great influence about their children, even though they get married and have children. So that's a different picture. But according to Bible, you become independent. You have to be responsible and see. For example, in Korea, we still get the money from parents when you get married, and you buy a house from your parents' money. And Americans, they don't do that. Most of cases, they don't do that, except those rich and famous. I mean, they do their own thing. But generally, they go independent, earn own money, and buy a house when they are able to. They do not get money from their parents. If they get money from parents, it's not a donation, it is a loan, and you are to pay back to the parents. So that's kind of a different picture. And it is because of this belief system. The worldview is different. So the marriage is not only sacred, it's a very special relationship between man and wife. And the Christian has a very different perspective about the marriage and the family. Now, alienation. This is a sad story and a very tragic story. But this event, it defines who we are. And because of the word, and they used to use the word the fall instead of alienation to describe this event. Fall means human beings are in a certain level, and then because of Adam and Eve, the human generation or people fall from that status. But alienation is more in terms of relationship. So it's not much about the position, it's about the relationship, right? Broken relationship. It's not that you're losing your status as or prestige as a man, but it is the tragedy of being separated